Hi, I'm MTG, and welcome to another deck tech breakdown. And today we're going to be taking a look at Ratadrabik of Urborg. And holy heck and heck, am I really excited about this! I have an Alinda deck, so some of the tech that I use for that deck, kind of came over, and I was thinking like it could really apply to what this commander wants to do. So it's 4 CMC, and I really like that as well because there's a higher probability that you're going to be able to recast this commander multiple times, and it's in Orzhov, which means there are a lot of different ways to get it out of the graveyard again if it is too expensive to keep casting from the command zone. So I think just with the access for like those colors, it's gonna be so incredibly powerful. And I know like when you see this, it kind of screams at you like maybe this wants to be a zombie tribal deck, but I don't think that's necessarily the direction you want to take this commander. So it's a zombie wizard, has Vigilance and Ward 2. The Ward 2 is very nice because it'll already come in with built-in protection. It's not going to be the same as like maybe having a shield counter, but it's still going to be really nice because it's still going to charge like, free spells like Deadly Relic too if someone wants to target it. The other thing too that why I would see maybe people would want to build towards like a zombie tribal deck is other zombies you control have Vigilance. So just because it says that text, I don't think it's like necessarily a, zombie tribal. You can do that. It'll be successful, but I still think like, breaking outside of the mold of, the first impulse when you read this text is not to necessarily lean into the zombie tribal. So whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not a legendary and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other color types. So when I see this, I think like there are so many legendary creatures that have really good like tax effects for drain and like good death triggers. And so if you're able to make tons of the tokens for that aren't legendary, then that means you could potentially put 3 of those legendaries on the battlefield at the same time. And so what I mean by that is you could have a way to double the tokens that are created, and you could bring something with like a reanimation effect from the graveyard back onto the battlefield. And because those tokens are not legendary, that legendary creature that went to the graveyard coming back will be on the battlefield. Because the other piece of this that's really crazy about this commander is it does not exile the legendary card when it dies. So again, it says whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token. But nowhere in that does it say exile it and create a token like a lot of other cards with this similar type of ability does. So the fact that 1, it's not exiling your legendary creatures, 2, it's making tokens, just opens us up for a ton of broken things. So for example, imagine having to go up against 3 Cabal Consuls of Allocations on the battlefield and having to deal with the fact that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you're going to be taking 6 damage. And imagine if there's, Cabal out and a Veto Thorn of the Duskgrows, you're going to be getting hit for so much drain damage, it's going to be insane. So I think what this deck wants overall is repeatable sack outlets like Viscera Seer or Yawgmoth or something like Woestrider, where at instant speed without having to worry about leaving mana up, you can sacrifice something, because if you have a creature on the battlefield that is going to be a target for like an exile effect, in response, you can keep your legendaries protected essentially by sacking those creatures and putting them in the graveyard and then finding a way to get them out. Because again, even white has a lot of like recursion things that have dropped recently as well that are outside of just, black having access to getting important things out of the graveyard. So I think here, like if your stuff ends up in the graveyard, it's not going to be a big problem. So the other thing too with this is token doublers. So Anointed Procession, Teosa Karlov are going to be crucial for this. I think you're going to have a lot of like fun if you can just make an insane amount of like legendary tokens. The other thing here, again, mentioned before, is recursion. You're probably going to have, a few board wipes or a few pieces that are going to be targeted, because when you get a lot of legendaries, especially making copies of this and seeing the scary stuff that the commander can do, you're probably going to get hit with a lot of removal. You have like Animate Dead, and then a new card that dropped with Battle for the Boulder's Gate is Ascend from Avernus, which is a white spell, and you pay X, and I think it's like 2 white, and you get like anything that's like X value less back from the graveyard. So that's like a super kind of like another living death minus having to, add the board wipe and worry about what your opponents have in their graveyard. So that's a really good way to get stuff back. And then the other last piece of this, I think, is like, again, once people see that you have your engine together or realize what your commander can do, you're going to need to protect it because it will be a target for removal. So I think you're going to want to add in things like Malachor Rebirth, Feign Death, Kaya's Ghost Form, or Lightning Greave, something to just keep it from being hit, or if it does get hit, not having to recast it from the command zone. And yeah, so that's kind of like my overall view. I don't know how possible some of those effects will be to pull off, but I think it would be fun to try to like play around with stuff and see where it goes. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. Hope you found this helpful, and I would love to hear, what your thoughts are on this commander as well. So see you around. Bye.